I guess that's exactly what I took from this reading. What did you think, Erica, after seeing the feminist side and kind of the racism that's within it and the classism? What struck you the most?
So I know we've talked about it before, but the thing that struck me the most was a lot of just the views of how the women are treated because they're women in these positions. And the thing that really stuck out to me for the entire article or essay was when it talked about how it's mostly stuck in this like cycle because they aren't trained with the responsibility to, or like the knowledge of how to do domestic work. So like if a woman is in the middle class and she wants to kind of rise above like what's expected of her as a wife and as a woman, say home mom, and get a job, or maybe she's just, I'm going to get a job, and that's what she goes straight to, but they want to have a family. Of course, someone needs to be taking care of the kids and the house during the day. Then she's going to hire somebody to do that work while she's gone. Unfortunately, it's not like the men ever has to think about that, but the only option for people to hire are usually women. And it's just kind of this cycle of, like, not that it needs to be any certain type of person, but it shouldn't only be one gender. Or, you know what I mean?
So how does that make you feel knowing that that's a reality of today?
I think at first it was pretty, like, it didn't make me feel any sort of way because, like, I've told you before, we had somebody growing up who, like, cleaned our house and, like, took care of, like, myself and my brothers. So for me, that was just kind of, like, what it was. Like, that stigma was put into my life as well, like, before I even could stop to think about how that was interesting that she was a woman, you know?
Yeah.
But I think now that I can reflect on it and being, like, a college student myself who's looking for a career someday, it makes me frustrated and annoyed that is just what's expected of me, and like my friends who are all really excited to have really cool jobs and not that being a domestic worker would be a cool job if that's what you wanted to do, but when we just aspire for things that are much different, that we could be expected to do certain jobs in the same way that like men are expected to do certain jobs. Why does the woman's expected job looks so different from what a man's should be?
Yeah, that's a good point. I can understand why I'd be so frustrated to kind of be put in this box of what comes after college and later in life when, you should have the whole world open to you. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, and I don't feel that pressure myself, which is good, and I feel really blessed to, not have that be what I'm set up for only.
Right.
Again, if that's what you want to do, then that's cool. But if that's my only option that's expected of me, then I'm going to feel trapped. So I feel very blessed about that. But it still frustrates me that it is what expected of women, and especially when it goes into talking about women of color. And like again, that's not something that I'm going to ever have to come across in my life. But it's frustrating and it's annoying to think that, especially if they're of color and they're women, that's just like how it's going to be. Like, of course you're going to, or be a domestic worker and clean someone's house and take care of their kids all day, so when you come home you can clean your house and take care of your kids,
Yeah. I know you mentioned earlier that growing up you had a babysitter who kind of looked after you guys, and you mentioned that she was white. So what do you think, can I just get your thoughts on, like being a white domestic worker versus a black domestic worker, and like how do you think that plays out differently in each person's life?
It's an interesting question because I'm obviously very biased with only having the experience with the one, and like I know we talked about in class, the only like experience exposure I have to any like domestic worker of color would be through like movies or like reading The Help and things like that. And of course those are also very different in the time of history that they were in versus now, or if the woman that worked for us was black. Again, I would love to think that my parents wouldn't have treated her any differently. And like it reminds me of this passage that says, where is it? I highlighted. Oh, it's just on 193. One of the most common experiences reported by women of color in reference to different standards was the request to scrub floors on their hands and knees rather than simply mopping. Again, I in the 21st century or the 21st century, when my family had someone working for us in this context, I would like to hope that there wasn't any idea of, oh, well, like, my mom would mop the floor and that would be plenty clean enough, but because she's a woman of color, we'll ask her to do it a little bit more detailed and a little bit more of a demeaning way. Again, I don't see that happening in my life,
Mm-hmm.
but it's interesting that that's something that has been noticed in this article by the testimonies given.
Yeah.
That, like, they will be asked to do the same they'll do the same work, but in a different form that can appear more demeaning, and the employer will care a little bit less because of that color. Just, that makes me fiery inside.
Yeah, I can understand. That's fair that you feel so outraged at that. I can't believe that even in the 21st century this is still an issue. It's really disturbing.
Yeah.
To say the least.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for talking to me about this.
You too!